What if the weapon hailed as Ukraine's miracle, its ultimate trump card, the very embodiment of Western technological supremacy and hope for national resurgence, was erased in mere moments, unraveling the world's fragile balance and sending shockwaves through the very foundations of global security? Imagine the collective gasp in war rooms and newsrooms worldwide as the unthinkable unfolds before their eyes. For months, speculation had swirled about the West's secret Flaminho missile cache. This was not just another military project. It became the North Star for a battered nation, a multi-billion-dollar gamble on a new chapter in warfare. Across Kyiv, Brussels, Washington, and London, the countdown to victory beat louder with every whisper, transforming the Flaminho from rumor to legend. Analysts and diplomats pored over leaked blueprints. Breathless news cycles dissected every hint. The Flaminho, they claimed, would guarantee Ukraine's triumph, deter Russia for a generation, and restore Western dominance whose luster had faded since the end of the Cold War. Even the mere suggestion that a handful of these missiles could redraw borders, force new treaties, and allow NATO to dictate the shape of Europe sent confidence soaring. Faith in Western ingenuity, in the alliances forged from the ashes of the Second World War, reached its highest pitch. Then, in one fateful night, history pivoted. In an assault that seemed to materialize from the shadows, Russia wiped out the entire Flaminho arsenal with chilling precision. In minutes, years of strategy, the myth of invincible Western arms, and the promise of easy victory collapsed like a house of cards. Shockwaves jolted from Kyiv to Washington to Berlin. How could their most secret, most advanced weapon disappear so quietly, so completely? What did Russia discover? And how did they pull off what many considered impossible? The stakes, as the world soon realized, were colossal. A misreading of this moment would mean gambling with not only national security and the fortunes of investors, but the very alliances that have anchored the post-war order. This was more than a military setback. It was a seismic shift, threatening to unravel trust, stability, and decades of hard-won peace. In this new era, ignorance itself becomes a weapon, one that could topple not just armies, but entire nations. The lesson is stark. In modern conflict, believing myth over hard reality can be more dangerous than any missile. How did Russia penetrate the West's most secret defenses? The answer is buried in a complex web of intelligence leaks, covert tactics, and the silent arms race that has raged beneath the headlines for years. To understand this operation, we must look back at history's most audacious intelligence coups, moments like Israel's capture of Soviet radar secrets in the Six-Day War, or the Stuxnet cyber attack that sabotaged Iran's nuclear dreams. Each time, the side that mastered information, deception, and speed claimed victory, regardless of the hardware at hand. But why did so many gamble their hopes, fortunes, and even national reputations on a single secret weapon? The answer is rooted in myth, the legend of Flaminho. Cloaked in secrecy so thick that even its existence seemed like a whispered rumor, the Flaminho system was hailed as a technological savior. In government offices, military bunkers, and think tanks, the word Flaminho dominated every agenda. For months, Western media, defense experts, and millions of Ukrainians awaited its arrival as if it were the second coming. Flaminho was never just hardware. It was hope forged in steel, a symbol of high-tech dominance, and a promise to tip the scales of war. Ukraine's allies poured in billions of dollars, mobilized the world's top engineers, and sourced the most advanced components from global markets. NATO's credibility, Western military prestige, and the trust of entire populations were staked on this single, untested arrow. Rumors claimed each Flaminho missile packed the punch of an entire bomber squadron. 10 Flamingos, it was said, could decide the terms of peace. A full arsenal could redraw the map of Eastern Europe. With each passing day, the myth swelled, raising expectations to dizzying heights. The psychological power of such a weapon is not new. During the Second World War, the Germans pinned their hopes on the V-2 rocket, believing it would turn the tide against the Allies. In the Cold War, The United States and the Soviet Union raced to deploy ever more awe-inspiring nuclear arsenals, convinced that a single technological leap could ensure their survival and supremacy. In each instance, faith in technology became a double-edged sword, a source of hope, but also a blind spot. For a weary West, Flaminho offered a shortcut: overwhelming firepower and unmatched precision, a way to support Ukraine without sending troops or risking direct confrontation. It was the ultimate promise: victory without sacrifice, dominance without exposure. The stakes were existential. If Flaminho worked, it would prove that modern wars could be won from a distance, by intellect and invention alone. But if it failed, the shockwaves would tear through military doctrine and national morale alike. In shadowy corridors, experts whispered about its abilities: hypersonic speed, radar-evading surfaces, artificial intelligence navigation that could outsmart any defense, real or imagined. The legend itself became a weapon, meant to terrify Russian commanders and embolden Ukrainian soldiers. But what happens when myth collides with the hard facts of war? Legends hold power only until their first real test. As the world would soon see, Russia was ready not just to challenge the Flaminho myth, but to annihilate it in a single, flawless strike. The countdown to Flaminho's debut had become a global obsession. But while the West celebrated, Russia was quietly preparing the most daring operation of the war. Picture the world's most advanced missile shield, long considered unbeatable, reduced to ash not by brute force, but by cunning. Ukraine's Flaminho arsenal did not fall to overwhelming firepower. Instead, it was undone by a Russian attack so multi-layered, so perfectly coordinated, that it forced every Western capital to question its own security dogmas. The operation began in silence. Russian electronic warfare teams saturated the atmosphere, jamming communications, blinding radars, and injecting digital noise. Ukrainian defenders, suddenly isolated from their sensors, could not distinguish real threats from decoys. In that sudden darkness, panic spread, faster than any missile, deeper than any wound. Then came the decoys. Hundreds of low-cost drones raced across the fields like a swarm of locusts. Their purpose was not destruction, but provocation. Each buzzing craft forced air defense crews to react, exposing their positions and depleting precious interceptor missiles. The West's finest systems, many of which had been tested only in simulations or peacetime drills, now found themselves on the front line, visible, vulnerable, and running dangerously low on ammunition. This tactic mirrored historical precedents. During the Yom Kippur War, Egypt and Syria opened hostilities with waves of decoy attacks, draining Israel's missile defenses before unleashing the real assault. In the Gulf War, the United States used Tomahawk cruise missiles and electronic jamming to overwhelm Iraqi air defenses. The lesson: even the most advanced shield can be breached if the attacker is clever enough to manipulate its operators. With radars overwhelmed and launchers nearly empty, the real assault began. Hypersonic missiles, moving at speeds so great they appeared as blurs on radar screens, came down from the stratosphere. There was no time to react, no chance to intercept. One by one, the bunkers and launch pads crumbled. The arsenal once believed untouchable was erased within moments. Yet hardware alone did not win this battle. Behind the precision was an invisible network of intelligence. Russian cyber teams had infiltrated military networks, sowing confusion and sabotaging logistics weeks before the attack. Satellites tracked every move, while agents slipped into supply chains and defense contractors, leaking secrets back to Moscow. Every layer of the assault was crafted to exploit a specific flaw in Western thinking: the belief that technology alone could guarantee safety. When the hypersonic struck, the defenders were not merely outgunned, they were outmaneuvered. Years of doctrine, billions in spending, and the myth of technological supremacy vanished in a single, blinding stroke. The world's most trusted shields had proven paper-thin. The consequences rippled outward like a stone thrown into a still pond. If even the most secret and advanced defenses could be cracked, what hope was there for the rest of NATO? What would become of the billions poured into high-tech arsenals, of alliances built on the faith in unbreakable walls? The foundation of Western security, the promise of safety itself, had been shattered. Now, with the illusion gone and vulnerabilities laid bare, the world faced a chilling new reality. In an age where intelligence reigns, who could ever feel safe again? Within hours, panic overtook military briefings from Brussels to Washington. Leaders scrambled to understand how a single strike could change the rules of war overnight. What happens when a single defeat ripples outward, cracking alliances and shaking the faith of entire nations? The answer is written in the annals of history. After the fall of France in 1940, European confidence in the Maginot Line, another technological marvel, evaporated overnight, forcing a complete re-evaluation of defense strategy. When the Soviet Union shot down the U-2 spy plane in 1960, American leaders suddenly realized their intelligence was not infallible. For Ukraine, the destruction of the secret Flaminho arsenal was not just a military setback. It was a seismic blow to morale, faith, and strategy, a wound that cut deep into the country's sense of security. Overnight, trust in leadership faltered. Confidence was replaced by cold uncertainty and raw fear. In the streets of Kyiv, confusion reigned. Commanders second-guessed every decision, while ordinary citizens struggled to process the unthinkable loss. The one hope, months in the making, had been erased in minutes. Now, every plan and promise seemed fragile, every expectation hollowed out. But the shockwaves did not stop at Ukraine's borders. Inside NATO and the European Union, the mood shifted from cautious optimism to outright panic. Eastern members, Poland, the Baltic states, Romania, demanded immediate action, terrified they could be next. Yet farther west, hesitation and doubt took hold. Old rifts resurfaced, splitting the alliance along familiar lines as leaders clashed over what, if anything, should come next. This reaction is not unprecedented. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, the United States and its allies were divided over how to respond to the Soviet threat. In the aftermath of the September 11th attacks, NATO invoked Article 5 for the first time, but not without internal debate and uncertainty. History teaches that alliances are most vulnerable in moments of shock, when old certainties are shattered by new realities. Across the Atlantic, Washington and Brussels faced a grim reckoning. The obliteration of Flaminho shattered the reputation of Western technology. Billions of euros and dollars, years of research, secret treaties, and cutting-edge components had been erased in a single, perfectly coordinated strike. Allies and adversaries alike asked, if Flaminho was not safe, what else was vulnerable? The credibility of Western arsenals hung by a thread. Could any airbase, missile system, or supply corridor truly be considered secure now? In every war room, nervous generals pored over inventories, racing to shore up defenses that suddenly seemed riddled with invisible holes. A domino effect loomed over the alliance. If Russian tactics could unravel Ukraine's best-kept secrets, what about supply lines in Poland, or air bases across the Baltics? What about targets inside NATO territory itself? The sense of safety that had underpinned the alliance for decades was crumbling. For Ukraine, the consequences were immediate and crushing. The loss of Flaminho meant losing not only a weapon, but the very initiative in the war. Strategic hope gave way to anxiety, and dependence on Western aid deepened, aid that now seemed uncertain, as doubts rippled through every capital. Western unity, once taken for granted, was now in jeopardy. The myth of technological invincibility had been shattered. Confidence, in governments, in alliances, in the very future, teetered on the edge. The rules of power had changed, and no one could say what would come next. But in the aftermath, as leaders scrambled for answers and adversaries watched, one question burned brighter than all the rest. How had Russia done it? The search for truth and a path forward was only beginning. As in the aftermath of Pearl Harbor or the fall of Saigon, self-examination became not just prudent, but necessary for survival. What if all the world's most expensive weapons mean nothing without intelligence and adaptability? The destruction of Ukraine's secret Flaminho missile arsenal shattered a core illusion. That technology alone guarantees supremacy. The Kharkiv gambit proved victory now belongs to those who master the art of integration, fusing intelligence, electronic warfare, drones, and precision strikes into a single, living force. In this new reality, the side that can see, learn, and adapt at lightning speed holds the true advantage. Russia's operation made clear that information is the sharpest weapon. Satellite images, intercepted signals, cyber intrusions, and on-the-ground informants must be woven together, not hoarded in silos. Only by merging every stream of intelligence can commanders anticipate, disrupt, and outmaneuver their enemies. The one who knows more, faster, can turn the tide, no matter how impressive the hardware stacked against them. Old defense doctrines, pouring billions into cutting-edge missile batteries and stealth machines, have been exposed as dangerously brittle. Static lines, heavy arsenals, and even imported elite tech fell to nimble, layered tactics. Survival now demands constant evolution, flexible defenses, rapid redeployment, deceptive maneuvers, and a relentless hunt for real-time data. In this era, adaptability is worth more than firepower. Consider the Battle of Britain in 1940. The Royal Air Force survived not just by having Spitfires and Hurricanes, but by rapidly adapting tactics, dispersing airfields, and using radar information in novel ways. When the United States faced insurgents in Iraq, they learned the hard way that overwhelming firepower could not defeat a nimble, networked adversary without equally agile intelligence. Technological dominance is hollow if the enemy can blind your radars, jam your communications, and paralyze your command centers. Russia did not just destroy equipment, they severed the very nervous system of Western defense. Those who cling to old paradigms, treating war as a contest of gadgets instead of wits, are doomed to repeat Kharkiv's disaster. Ignore these lessons, and the fallout is existential. Wasted billions, broken alliances, and the risk of failed states. The price of stubbornness is collapse, or an escalation that spirals beyond control, with no weapon able to save you. What practical steps can be taken? First, Western militaries must overhaul their intelligence-sharing protocols, ensuring that data from satellites, drones, human sources, and cyber operations flows seamlessly across all levels of command. Second, training must prioritize adaptability. Exercises should simulate not just standard attacks, but the loss of key assets, communications blackouts, and multi-layered deception. Third, investments should shift from single, high-value assets to distributed, resilient systems that can take losses and keep fighting. Finally, alliances must be stress-tested through regular, realistic war games that expose weaknesses before adversaries do. This is the real legacy of the Kharkiv Gambit, a warning that the old rules have died. We have entered an era where code, cunning, and speed outweigh steel. The question is no longer what you own, but how quickly you can learn, improvise, and strike back. Yet as Ukraine reels and the West scrambles to respond, the stakes of this new reality grow ever higher. The next move will determine not just the future of the battlefield, but the fate of the entire balance of power. If the next move could decide everything, can we still afford the comfort of old habits? For generations, Western security has depended on faith in superior technology, a conviction that the newest missile, the most advanced radar, the cleverest algorithm would always tip the scales. That faith was shattered in a single night when Ukraine's secret Flaminho arsenal vanished in fire and silence. Russia's operation was more than a tactical strike. It was a deliberate statement. Intelligence, agility, and cunning strategy have now eclipsed brute technological might. As Flaminho's last hope faded at dawn, the world saw more than just the loss of a weapon. This was a signal flare. The doctrines that shaped NATO's playbooks, guided trillions in investments, and reassured the public of Western dominance are now dangerously out of date. Clinging to these old assumptions is no longer just an error in judgment. It is a risk to the very pillars of order and peace. this is a moment of reckoning. If the world's most secret arsenals and heavily guarded technologies can be undone in a single blow, then no fortress is safe. The myth of invulnerability has been stripped away. From Kyiv to Brussels, from government offices to underground bunkers, the new reality is taking hold. The future belongs to those who adapt fastest, not to those with the most expensive machines. The stakes have never been higher. The trust of citizens, the fate of nations, and untold trillions in security investments now hang on a single question. Will we keep repeating the same mistakes, or evolve before it is too late? This crisis is not limited to Ukraine or one missile system. It is a warning to all of the West. Misreading the new rules risks not just losing battles, but losing the very world order that has kept the peace for generations. History is filled with moments where complacency led to disaster. When the French relied on the Maginot Line, they underestimated the speed and cunning of the German blitzkrieg. When the United States believed in the absolute deterrence of nuclear weapons, they were surprised by the Soviet Union's technological leaps in missile technology and space exploration. Each time, the lesson was clear: adapt or face defeat. Now, as the dust settles and the world counts the cost, the true test begins, demanding genuine adaptation from our leaders and defenders. In this new era, clinging to yesterday's playbook may be the most dangerous move of all. But there is hope. History also shows that those willing to learn, innovate, and act boldly in the face of crisis can emerge stronger than before. The United States rebuilt its intelligence apparatus after Pearl Harbor, the Royal Air Force adjusted its tactics after early setbacks, and NATO reformed its entire command structure after the end of the Cold War. For Ukraine and its allies, the way forward begins with honest self-assessment, rapid adaptation, and the courage to challenge sacred cows. It requires embracing uncertainty, investing in resilience, and forging new doctrines suited to a world where speed and information matter more than ever. Above all, it requires unity, not just in rhetoric, but in action. The bonds of alliance must be renewed, not with empty promises, but with shared risks, shared investments, and shared intelligence. Only then can the West hope to recover its edge and restore the confidence of its people. In the end, the destruction of Flaminho is not just a story of loss. It is a call to action, a warning, and an opportunity. The question debt is closed. Survival in this new era will belong not to the strongest or the wealthiest, but to those who adapt, integrate, and outthink their rivals. The next chapter is unwritten. The world waits to see who will shape it.